My name is Rossie Hutchinson and I'm a quilt designer, and today I'm going to show you reverse applique. So the first thing I'm going to show you is actually our traditional applique, where the design element is added via a piece of fabric being put on top of our background. Reverse applique differs in that we're going to add our bit of design from behind. So I'm going to be showing you the construction of this block, but I've also got this block here where there's an irregular shape, and I'll show you the one step. There's only one step that really differs when you've chosen a hand-drawn or irregular shape instead of a circle. So you're going to want to start with your basic block. I pre-wash and then starch my fabric. And I've chosen to cut my fabric an inch taller and an inch wider than the block that I'm going to end up with. That gives me room to trim at the end. So the first thing I'm going to do is fold this in half and then in half again and press it. And that's so that I get marks at those points and know what half is in each direction. Now, I have to decide how large I want the circle for the center, and I'm just gonna be tracing my little needle bowl here. And so my second piece of fabric that I need to add is about an inch taller and an inch wider than that needle bowl. And I just place that in the center, like so. Put my shape on it, and then go ahead and trace it all the way around. I've got one already all neatly traced for me in this stack here. Okay, so then I want to go ahead and pin, or I'm actually going to use masking tape to keep this smaller piece of fabric in position on the background. Like so. And so now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine for our first little bit of sewing. So you're going to want to use a slightly smaller stitch than normal, and you're going to sew directly on the line. So use a foot where you can see nicely the line, and just start nice and slow going around that edge. So the important thing here is to keep this line as smooth as possible. So if you find yourself wandering off your line, rather than do, a bold readjustment, just do a gentle, easy, smooth readjustment. Being slightly off by a thread here and there is not going to make a difference in your end product, but if you kind of make a corner as you're sewing, then that might show. So you're going to want to go all the way around that. And then when you get to the end, you can just stop sewing. You can use the machine's auto cutter if you have one of those. I'm going to pop back up because I've got one already to this step waiting for me. Okay, so here we have one that has been sewn all the way around. I've got my little extra threads here. That's not something we have to worry about. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut out the center of this circle. And I'm going to leave about a ½ inch between the stitched line and where I'm going to cut. You can use scissors or your rotary cutter, whatever you're more comfortable with. And you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be precisely a ½ inch. You're going to see I'm going to get a little bit closer, a little bit further from that line as I go around. Just whatever works for you. So this circle is now scraps. You can find fun ways to use it later. All right, so here we are with this cut in our circle, and what we're going to do now is we're going to clip into this excess. And you're going to want to clip about every ½ inch or ¼ inch around, and you want to clip to, but not through that line of stitching that you made. So just take it easy and focus and go around. And of course, if you accidentally cut through that stitch line, just pop back on your sewing machine and add a little stitching behind it so that it holds into place. Now, here's one you can see that I've cut all the way around, all my little clips. And you can kind of trial and error this, because on the next step, you'll see what happens. It won't look quite right. It won't flip very nicely if your clips are too far apart. And you can just go back in and add them if you need them. So now we're going to use our iron to put this little piece of fabric, we're going to turn it to the back. And the fabric is really comfortable doing that. You're not asking it to do too much. So I think sometimes people think this is a nervous making process, and it really shouldn't be. Because I've starched this fabric, I'm going to release the starch with my water bottle, my hot iron. And that just means that I was enjoying the inflexibility of the starch when I was doing all that curved piecing, and now I want it to be as flexible as possible. So you can just turn this to the back. Some people find it useful to work from the back. You might like to work from the front. You can turn as you go. You want to keep the outside of your block straight, and then you should see that you're making a parallel line with that square that you're turning around. So just flatten that out, and it might take a little while. You might have to look from the front and then look from the back. Just get your fingers in there. Ultimately, it wants to do what you're asking it to do, so you shouldn't have any big drama at this point. Okay. So now we've got our background hole ready to go. What we're going to do is select or make what's going in the center. And so I'm, the destination is this block. So I have just these two rectangles. These are 4 inches by 8 inches. I just stitched them together with a 1/4 inch seam. And I put that on the table under my shape. Now, depending on how you ironed here, you might still have your markers showing where the centers of the blocks is, and you can use that if you wanted to center this. So just grab it carefully and flip it, and use your tape again to put it in place. So once you've got that taped in place, you go back to your sewing machine, and the last thing you're gonna do is top stitch. So this is the part where this is really going to show. So you want to do this as carefully as possible as you go around. And I'm just using this little side of my 1/4 inch foot as the spacer to go around. When you reach the end of the circle this time, you're going to want to stop about 1 stitch short of meeting where you started, and then don't use your automatic clipper. You want to pull this out to get the thread. You might have to adjust your machine a little because you want this length of thread here. And what I'll have you do is stitch this on a hand needle, take it and put it back through where that stitch met, and do the same thing with the thread you started with, and that way you'll have a complete circle of thread where you can't tell where you started or stopped. So now that you know how to do reverse applique, let me show you some of my favorite projects that I've made using this process. This is the Painted Pebbles quilt, and it's based on a screen print by Garima Dewan, and I did this with her permission. So you can see these are irregular shapes inspired by sort of stones, and there's piecing underneath. Over here on the wall is one of my favorites using this method, and you can see how big these circles are, and that's because of the prints to get the beautiful doll, the little girls that were in the fabric design. The big circle let those really shine. So that's reverse applique.